Greetings travelers, and welcome to Azeroth. Today we are taking a trek into the Elwynn Forest, heartland of the Human Kingdom of Stormwind, and where many an adventurer begins their journey in the world of Warcraft. Nestled comfortably in the foothills of the Red Ridge Mountains to the east and Burning Steppes to the north, outlined by the Nazfaridi River and deep darkness of Duskwood to the south, and bordered by the golden glades of Westfall predictably to the west, this woodland is steeped in classical fantasy imagery. It is a bright, warm forest filled with wilderness to explore, monsters to slay, people to help, and loot to claim. Perhaps given that this province would be seen by so many players, many of them new to the game, Blizzard packed Elwynn full of cool Easter eggs and secrets to find, as well as smaller tales told through environmental storytelling that you may have missed during your own adventures. So, let's take a look at all the subtle secrets and environmental Easter eggs this zone has to offer us. Before we get started, you know I am contractually obligated as a YouTuber to ask you to like this video and subscribe if you want to see more. You can also ring the bell to get notified so you never miss any videos like this. I want to explore the lore and secrets of the entirety of World of Warcraft, as well as many other games, and I would love if you joined me in that journey. But for now, let's get started with Elwynn. It seems only fitting to begin in Northshire Valley, where most humans take their first steps in their adventure. Whilst I would hesitate to call the area peaceful in World of Warcraft's vanilla release, the Abbey has seen better days since the Cataclysm. Invading Orcs from Blackrock Mountain have taken hold of the Abbey Vineyards, a threat arguably much worse than the Defias cutpurses that once occupied the area. Funnily enough, as you will see here on the map, a small shack where the Defias agent Garrick Padfoot once roosted has been more or less untouched by the incursion, perhaps out of respect for the first named NPC most humans were sent to bring to justice in earlier iterations of this world. The only other area of the vineyard left unburned are the two outhouses close to its edge. I suppose the orcs know that everybody has to go sometime, and you might as well maintain some privacy. Back at the Abbey itself, we can find Sergeant Willem stationed here on our map, overlooking the battle in the valley. Willem was once just a marshal, and was actually the first person new characters would talk to in creating a human in Vanilla and Classic, though he appeared to be nothing more than a named Stormwind guard in those iterations. He has taken his promotion in stride, donning a new shiny set of armor and a position of leadership amongst the other soldiers. Further into the valley, towards the mountains, we will find that Echo Ridge Mine has been closed. This is just tragic, considering how many nostalgic delves into this mini-dungeon were made before the Cataclysm. In universe, it's possible that the mine collapsed during the Cataclysm, but I honestly can't think of why this mine was blocked off from a game design standpoint. Maybe it just didn't fit with any of Blizzard's ideas for the revamped area? Regardless, judging by the claw marks on the sign on the gate, something else wasn't too happy about the decision to close the mine. Occasionally, a rare kobold named Gug Fatcandle will spawn here and guard the entrance, and as you can see here, he had been killed before I could record this footage. Shame. That was everything of note I could find in Northshire, but whilst leaving the valley you may have noticed the beautiful Lionhead fountain within the walls. But slightly less noticeable are the two banners flowing beside it, featuring a white griffin and rising sun on a red field. What I find most interesting here is that Northshire does not fly the blue and gold commonly associated with Stormwind. At first I thought that maybe this was just a cool little detail that the Abbey had its own banner, but then I recognized these flags as the heraldry for the Griffin Masters throughout Azeroth, so it's unclear what exactly they're doing here on the walls of Northshire Abbey. Perhaps the environmental designers at Blizzard simply wanted something to differentiate the red-roofed Abbey's land from the rest of Elwynn, and this was the best asset they had on hand. Who knows? A slight jaunt south of Northshire, you can find a home simply crawling with critters called cats. This is the home of Donnie and Thania, a vendor who will sell players pet cats. She is a self-described crazy cat lady, and given that she is holding a cleaver and multiple cut purses and bandits that infest the forest do not seem to bother Donnie, this checks out. Just outside of the home, in her yard, she keeps 2 cows and several additional cats, all of whom can be killed if you are a heartless monster. 6 dishes presumably used to feed the cats can also be found here in this yard. It's a nice touch. Sadly, a small grave is resting in the back corner of this enclosed space, memorializing one Lord Underfoot, presumably an especially beloved kitty. The grave is not present in Vanilla or Classic, and though this is purely speculation, I imagine this is a reference to a Blizzard employee's pet who passed at some point early in the World of Warcraft. Near Donnie's home, here on your map, you will find a makeshift camp full of bandits and thieves, decorated with a lantern, supplies, and a training dummy riddled with arrows. I am particularly fond of this shield on the ground, which, judging by the texture work from the N64 era, is an ancient relic from many ages gone by. Further west, closer to the gates of Stormwind, you can find a small trail leading up into the hills, here on your map. Boxes and crates rest beside a lamppost marking the trail, perhaps suggesting that a delivery has recently been made. Up the trail, you will find the home of Pomeroy and Malroy, an herbalist and an alchemist respectively. Supplies are strewn about their home, with potion bottles lined up along the mantle, and the pair are willing to teach anyone who wishes to learn their ways. To the southwest, across the path leading to Stormwind, one can find a small clearing dotted with a well, a lamppost, and 2 benches, as well as a statue of the bust of a human. There are no markings identifying this statue, and my research yielded no clear results as to who this is supposed to be, so we don't even know if this statue is a grave or a memorial. Given the benches, I would assume that this is more than likely the equivalent of a small city park. The well here is occasionally visited by Clara Charles, who lives in a home nearby. Interestingly, at the well, she will be approached by 2 ambushers, or a single member of the Defias Brotherhood if you're playing Classic or Vanilla, and while they are hostile, they will not attack Clara. Instead, they will simply turn around and leave. This has led to some speculation about Clara's allegiances. Is she a spy or informant for the Defias or a similar criminal organization? Given that the Defias ambusher tells her that the Brotherhood will not tolerate her actions, and that the unaffiliated highwaymen tell her that she was in the wrong place at the wrong time, I don't think so. Is she related to someone that made the ambushers think twice about attacking her? She does share her surname with Gregory Charles, a high-leveled rogue trainer in the Undercity, but that seems so far away from Elwynn that I wouldn't really think that would have an impact on her safety. Was she just lucky and let off easy? Was this an interaction from a quest that was cut from the game? Has something glitched, or did a programmer forget to complete the code of this interaction? Was it designed as just a potential ambient interaction for new players? We may never know. To the south of the Charles house is the Breidenbecker homestead, here on your map. This home is slightly nicer than most in-game, with a built-in deck complete with a comfortable chair to relax in and watch the wilderness of the forest. But the model used for this deck is not unique. It's the same one used for some docks, like this one here. The Breidenbecker patriarch and matriarch, Rob and Kim, are named after 2 Blizzard employees of the same name. Likewise, their children, Ashley and Brad, are also references to real people. Ashley Breidenbecker is thanked in the credits of both World of Warcraft and StarCraft 2, and her NPC has been in-game since Vanilla. I would guess that she is named after a real-life child of the Breidenbeckers. Brad was added in the Cataclysm expansion, and was named after Rob's brother, Bradford Breidenbecker, which, just side note, is a great name. Bradford tragically passed away in 2007 after a battle with cancer, and Rob requested that his brother be immortalized in World of Warcraft. Chris Metzen, Blizzard's now retired vice president of story and franchise development, was friends with Bradford and caught wind of the request, deciding to memorialize Breidenbecker in an epic quest chain during the Wrath of the Lich King expansion. This storyline followed the heroic NPC Crusader Breidenbrad, who was battling an illness caused by the plague. When Azeroth was revamped in the Cataclysm expansion, I assume the Brad Breidenbecker NPC was added as another memorial, one where he could be closer to the digital incarnations of his family. It is such a beautiful little story for such a heartbreaking tragedy, and it's just a cool addition to this game. Good job, guys. On a lighter note, let's head back to Goldshire and take a look inside the Lion's Pride Inn, shall we? Though this inn has always seemed lively, filled with both charismatic NPCs and rowdy players, it has seen some improvements over the years. The inn's main dining area was somewhat bare and classic, with just tankards and plates adorning the table. At some point after the release of Hearthstone in 2014, however, a game board was added to the inn, prepared for play. A short walk away from Goldshire, we will find Crystal Lake, and a dock jutting into its clear waters. Despite the dilapidated boat sunken into the mud beside it, the dock itself seems to be in excellent condition and is well stocked. Here we can find the fishing trainer Lee Brown, and beside him is Jason Mathers, bearing the title Fishmonger. The That is surprisingly intimidating, which may have been the intention. Given his proximity to Crystal Lake, Jason Mathers may be a reference to the Friday the 13th franchise antagonist Jason Voorhees, who began his murder spree at Camp Crystal Lake. To the south of Goldshire, we will find the Fargo Deep Mine carved into the hills between the McClure Vineyards and Stonefield Farm. The mine will be familiar to most players. They have been sent here to help fight the kobold incursions since vanilla. Atop the rocky outcropping that houses Fargo Deep, one will find Goldtooth's Den. This particular kobold was once found deep within the mine, but was moved here after Cataclysm to streamline questing. But Blizzard put effort into the aesthetics of the den that you may not have noticed. Goldtooth, being a kobold in the Warcraft universe, is of course obsessed with candles, and keeps several lit ones precariously in wooden crates and boxes. That is dangerous, and he is just asking to start a forest fire. He also lives up to his name with a small pile of glowing treasure gleaming in the sunlight. One of them even seems to be like a massive chalice. Unfortunately, none of this can be pilfered for our own loot. Alas, the mine below Goldtooth's Den holds no real secrets or interesting details for us to find, at least nothing I could. But there is a small scene worth taking a look at, scattered amongst the mining equipment outside. Here, close to the mine's outhouses, we will find a worker's respite, a small plate and tankard resting on a table alongside a closed book, all illuminated by a lantern hanging up by a dagger driven into the wooden support beam. This looks like it would have been an excellent place to take a break when Fargo Deep was being manned by men, and not covered in kobolds. Before we take our leave of the Fargo Deep mine, a rare kobold named Narg the Taskmaster can be found keeping an eye on the kobold outside the mine. Before the Cataclysm, like Goldtooth, he too kept to the dark recesses of the mine. Further to the west, we come upon a peninsula called simply the Forest's Edge. Overrun by gnolls that have plagued Elwynn since the time before humans settled Stormwind, adventurers will find several small camps of the creatures spread throughout the peninsula. This is the area where the rare mob Gruff Swiftbite will spawn, but more interestingly, if you take a closer look at these camps, you will find some rather high-quality cushions under their tents. I suppose even gnolls can enjoy some comfort. Additionally, if you take a closer look at the texture of the tent, you will find the rather gruesome visage of a human face sewn into the other scraps of fabric. This texture is found all throughout the game, but this can be rather shocking for new players who happen to notice it at such an early part of the game. I mean, that's seriously some dark stuff. Of course, any jaunt through the Forest's Edge would not be complete without a mention of the woodland's most infamous monster, Hogger, the Scourge of Elwynn. After the Cataclysm, he was given his own subzone of the area called Hogger Hill, which is just littered with viscera and the dead body of a thief, who is part of the storyline that runs throughout Elwynn and Westfall. What I want to point out here are these massive rib cages. They're hard to miss, I know, but think about it. What exactly did these come from? They seem a bit large to be part of a cow or horse or bear or deer skeleton. A Kodo or Elix springs to mind, but the only way I can imagine Hogger getting his hand on one of those is if some unfortunate adventurer uses one as his mount, and then falls victim to the gnoll, which I suppose is entirely possible. He is scary. Or maybe these come from a dragon or similar mythic beast. It's just food for thought. These are really big skeletons, guys. To the southwest of Hogger Hill, a small island stands resolute in the waters between Elwynn, Westfall, and Duskwood, here on your map. On it, alongside various bits of flora, rest two graves at the base of a massive tree, an axe leaning up against one of them. These graves and who was laid to rest here are not mentioned anywhere else in game, so the story here is left completely up to your imagination. Could these have just been some local farmers or lumberjacks who wanted nice views from their graves? A loving couple laid to rest in a beautiful spot? Or perhaps these were heroes who died during one of the first wars, laid to rest just a short ways away from the Ravenhill Cemetery in Duskwood. Butterflies frequent this spot, so I prefer to think the latter. Heading east along this river, we come across Jared's Landing, a smuggling operation run by a goblin dockmaster notably not named Jared. A missed opportunity in my opinion. The dock is well stocked with supplies, and a boat hangs ready to be used for their illicit activity. This area was formerly in control of the Defias Brotherhood, used as a stop while smuggling goods from Redridge into Westfall. In Vanilla and Classic, it is the subject of a rogue class quest called Matthias and the Defias, but since Cataclysm, it has just been an interesting little stop we can explore hidden along the coast of Elwynn Forest. Speaking of the coast, if you travel to the east of Jared's Landing along the river, you may come across this rare tortoise-spawn Terrapis hustling his way along the river's bank. I love this guy. All of Warcraft's turtles are so endearing. Let's head back towards the gates of Stormwind for a bit, to the hills just south of the city. Here on your map, you will find a broken down cart filled with goods being looted by bandits, presumably a recent victim of the criminal activity of the forest. This appears to be a very dangerous spot. Another cart can be found in the same spot in Vanilla and Classic guarded by the Defias. It could just be the same cart, which, I mean, it is, but dang, they've been looting it for like 15 years. Further up these hills at the top of Thunder Falls, here on your map, one can find a small house crawling with bandits. Again, this lookout has been popular with cutthroats and thieves for years, having once been a base of operations for a cell of the Defias. This particular refuge must be used by hunters. Inside the home, the table is covered with blood and meat. Several trophies cut from game like boar and deer have been mounted upon the walls as well. At the base of the waterfall outside, here on your map, a drain can be found leading into Mirror Lake. Hopefully this water does not drain from Stormwind or its sewers, and was instead installed to help facilitate water flow from the boulders piled at the bottom of the waterfall, because it would be a horrible shame to pollute a lake like this. The drain seems to be a somewhat modern addition to the falls, as it was not included in Vanilla or Classic. Additionally, a waterlogged chest can be found at the bottom of the lake. Presumably this was a treasure that someone wanted to hide. Given its proximity to Mirror Lake Orchard, could it have been one of its former owners hiding valuables from the Defias or other bandits? Or something a criminally inclined individual wanted to keep from their allies? Or perhaps it was just a cool Easter egg added for explorers? It was probably that last one. Speaking of Mirror Lake Orchard, if we take a look at the table out back behind the orchard's house, we'll find 3 civilians named Samantha Cleland, Ian Jolly, and Joanna Jolly. Interestingly, they all seem to be at least on not killing terms with the bandits occupying the orchard, and seem so nonplussed about the entire situation that Ian naps peacefully on the table's bench, while Samantha and Joanna laugh and chat, all under the supervision or guard of a pair of these bloodthirsty bandits. This is concerning to me, as the trio do not appear to be involved in any quest revealing an alliance with the bandits, and do not appear in need of any rescue. What a strange sight. Also, inside the orchard's home, we can find the rare spawn Morgaine the Sly, a holdover from Vanilla and Classic. Despite the organization's apparent downfall, Morgaine has remained loyal to the Defias Brotherhood, and still wears their colors with pride. Before we completely leave Mirror Lake behind, let's head slightly to the west, where we can find the rare spawn Grizzly Ben sleeping soundly at the base of this tree. Alas, he was slain before I got a lot of footage, but fortunately there wasn't a lot more to say. So, sleep well, friend. Sleep well. Now, a lot of the land in Elwynn between quest objectives and significant locations is filled with small world-building details, places or objects that are really never even acknowledged in-game. For example, several wolf dens can be spotted throughout Elwynn Forest, offering nothing more than an explanation as to where all the wolves in this woodland sleep at night. These sorts of details are my favorite. They're simply there for enterprising explorers to find and to make a story in their mind, and that is just my favorite sort of thing in a game. So let's take a look at a few. East of Mirror Lake, here on your map, you will find a small bandit hideout here between 2 tree stumps. I am reticent to call it a camp, given its lack of any real infrastructure, but this is clearly a place where these bandits have decided to at least take a break, put down a lantern, and throw a shield on the ground for whatever reason. Just north of Jared's Landing, here on your map, you will find a small bandit camp, complete with training dummies and a tent for the bandits to sleep in or seek cover from the elements. Given its proximity to Jared's Landing, I would assume that these bandits have some connection to those patrolling the dock. Perhaps this is where they sleep when off-duty at the landing. Rarely, a man named Thuros Lightfingers will spawn here, another holdover from Classic and Vanilla and a veteran of the Defias, still showing his loyalty by donning a red bandana. A short ways north of this camp, here on your map, you will come across the ruins of some siege weaponry. The model used for this catapult is distinctly Orcish, a fact backed up by one of the displays in Ironforge's Hall of Explorers. This suggests that this is remnants from one of the Great Wars, perhaps from even as early as Warcraft 1, when the Horde successfully conquered Elwynn Forest. I love details like this. I didn't really know what this was as a kid, but I geeked out so hard when I put it together as an adult. A little further away now, along the southern edge of the mountains, separating Northshire Valley from the rest of Elwynn Forest, here on your map, you will find a small shack surrounded by a handful of cutpurses and a rogue wizard. They have a solid little setup here, if we're being honest, complete with a table set with plates and steins. Just to the south, here on your map, we will find a wolf den between that Bandit Camp and Crystal Lake. This den is significant because it is the home of the rare spawn Lamepaw the Whimperer. Don't love the name, but dang, I do like the pattern on that fur. A short walk to the east, here on your map, we will find an abandoned training dummy alone in the woods. This was presumably set up by bandits with a desire to improve their skills, but they were quickly driven away by the nearby pack of wolves, which is more than reasonable. A little further east, we will come upon the Jasper Lode Mine. Just like the Fargo Deep and Echo Ridge mines, veteran players will be familiar with this location. Adventurers in Vanilla and Classic were tasked with scouting out its depths, but if you go just a little further into the mine than you're required to, you will find that spiders have taken control of its depths, encasing many kobolds in spider silk webbings. Many of them are still alive. Poor things, this is like a nightmare for me. A rare spider will spawn near the rear of this cave, called Mother Fang. I'm going to leave now and let these spiders do their thing very far away from me. Just outside of the mine, we will find the named kobold Ruklar the Trapper, hanging out here with a bunch of his kobold buddies. Despite being named, there really isn't anything very special about Ruklar. He is associated with no quest and drops no special loot. Additionally, a short ways away, we will find a lone cow here, out of place so close to the mine. Perhaps the kobolds stole it or something. Now let's head to the south a little bit, here on your map, where you will happen upon a small graveyard outside the Tower of Azora. This was added either during Cataclysm or sometime after it. I would assume to lessen the amount of travel time players who died in the middle of Elwynn would be forced to endure during their walk of shame back to their corpse. I do like thinking of the in-universe implications of this addition, however. Did the Defias attack the Tower of Azora, killing enough of its acolytes within to warrant this small graveyard? Or was this result of some tragedy brought about during the Cataclysm? It's food for thought. Around this area, you may also find the rare spawn Tarantus wandering about the forest floor. I almost missed it because it had such a similar color palette to the grass. Now, like with the other spiders, I'm going to go away and leave it alone. Just to the south, here on your map, we will come across the Brackwell Pumpkinpatch, now a refuge for bandits. In Vanilla and Classic, this was once where players would hunt down Princess the Pig. She has since been replaced with the rare spawn Snoot the Rooter. 3 NPCs reside within the house next to the pumpkin patch. Erlen Drudgemore, who is just there to look cool and fight. Morgaine the Collector, who is the subject of the quest Manhunt. And Serena Caledon, who was part of a quest chain warlocks underwent to learn to summon their succubus. Drudgemore convinced Caledon to betray her warlock brethren and join the Defias Brotherhood, which didn't turn out too well for anyone involved. Interestingly, Gacken the Darkbinder wonders if Serena was a succubus herself, but quickly dismisses the idea. Now let's head just about as far east as we can go in Elwynn Forest, to the Eastvale logging camp that rests at the edge of the Red Ridge Mountains. This is a small questing hub, meant to act as a bridge for players before they headed off to Westfall. It's also where one of the horse breeders that humans, or those in high enough standing with Stormwind, can purchase their mounts from. Now, if we take a closer look here in the yard housing the horse stables, we will see a cute little doghouse, complete with a little dish. But unfortunately, there are no good boys anywhere to be seen, so alas, you cannot pet the dog here. To the south of Eastvale Logging Camp, near the river that marks the border of Elwynn into Duskwood, you will find the ramshackle dwelling of outlaws, headed up by the Defias agent Deadtooth Jack. This dastardly ne'er-do-well was once the subject of a warrior class quest, where he impersonated a Stormwind guard and stole the badge of Marshal Haggard, which explains why he is wearing the Stormwind tabard. I also adore the amount of little details added in this camp, from all the junk strewn about to the sword haphazardly thrust into the earth. It's a cool little camp that you may not have come across, given that there's no longer a real reason to head this far southeast in Elwynn. Let's head a little west now, to the Murloc village that rests where the water from Stone Cairn Lake empties into the Nasferidi. If we look amongst the wreckage scattered throughout the camp, we will notice the remains of a cart and a boat, both of the river's banks. One of the Murlocs here had made themselves very comfortable in the remains of the cart, which I find quite endearing. I understand how the boat made its way here. I mean, it's on a river, though I do wonder what a cart was doing here in such rough terrain close to these waters. Did the Murlocs drag it here? I mean, it seems plausible, but dang, like this area is surrounded by massive rocks. Now, heading upriver, we will find ourselves at Stone Cairn Lake and the Stone of Remembrance. This is a memorial built to honor all those who fell in the First War when Stormwind was lost to the Horde. And while the stone itself is quite difficult to miss, you may not have noticed the body of a dwarf named Hinsey Folk over on the western edge of the island. He was once part of the quest Alliance Paladins were given to learn how to resurrect friendly players, which has long since been removed from the game. It is still in Classic, however. Now, if we head out of Stone Cairn Lake to the northwest, here on your map, we will find the remains of a house. This was similarly once part of a quest where adventurers would need to recover an item from the chest that still remains in these ruins. But of course, this has long since been removed from the game. The husk of the house still stands, however, a monument to an earlier time in World of Warcraft. A very short walk from the burnt building, we will find that the northern edge of Stone Cairn Lake has been absolutely overrun by gnolls. This is the area where the rare spawn-fed fennel may pop up. Here on your map, you will find an absolutely massive keg of ale that the gnolls appear to have stolen. Whether or not they have figured out how to open it is unclear, though I do think a drunk gnoll would be an amusing sight to see. Further east along the edge of the lake, here on your map, you will come across a training camp that was once likely used by either Stormwind's Guard, an army, or an organized bandit clan like the Defias. However, now it has been overrun by the same gnolls that have taken root in this area. They are, of course, not using it to its full potential. Now, let's head back to Goldshire for what is perhaps one of the most iconic Easter eggs in the entirety of World of Warcraft. Just to the northeast of Goldshire, close to the Crystal Lake Dock, we will find a large home with two women inside, the leatherworking and skinning trainers Adele Fielder and Helene Peltskinner. It also appears to be either somewhat of an orphanage or these two women have a very large family, as several pieces of clothing and children's toys, including blocks and a leather ball, are strewn about its downstairs. However, there is something peculiar about these children. At 7 a.m. every morning, the children will leave the house and wander through Elwynn, heading to Stormwind, Goldshire, Northshire, and then back to this house. They will always walk in a particular formation, centered on the child named Cameron, and this formation is a pentagram. Well, most of the time. Here in my footage, they stopped and formed sort of an H, which I assume was not intentional, just like a pathing issue or something. Or maybe it stands for HE double hockey sticks, who knows? Creepy stuff either way, but it gets creepier. When they arrive back at this house, they may head upstairs and just stand in the master bedroom, quietly, looking off with dead eyes in the same direction in that pentagram formation. Oh, and dark, ominous music plays in this area, and occasionally you can hear voices, banshees screaming, ghouls calling out, and even echoes of the old god Cthulhu.
You will die.
This has led to all sorts of speculation about what these children even are. Possessed? Planted here by dark forces? Some even think that there's some sort of vengeful spirits. See, in the grass here between this home and the Lion's Pride Inn, you can find two small skulls. They're hard to see with all this foliage on, but turning it down, you can clearly see them here in the grass. Many often don't, and either run over them with their motorcycles or jump around in Murloc suits, but you get the idea. Now, to me, these look like small animal skulls from like a rabbit or squirrel, but I've seen others compare them to small children's skulls. I cannot verify 100% that these were present in vanilla, but they are in Classic, as you can see here, which tells me that they were perhaps placed before a smaller humanoid skull was modeled and textured. I know Elwynn was supposed to be amongst the first major areas they designed, but who knows for sure? Well, former Blizzard level designer Jonathan Statz does, and he talked about this Easter egg in the podcast Countdown to Classic. Stats explained that the children were all references to employees in World of Warcraft's dungeon department, including Stats himself, Aaron Keller, Dana Jan, Jose Ayo Jr., and Cameron Lamprecht, along with Lisa Schoner, who was Blizzard's receptionist. The children were added by exterior level designers, who had a friendly rivalry with the dungeon department. This is why the spooky music and evil sound effects were added in their house. They did not intend for the children to walk in a pentagram formation. Instead, 5 of the children were programmed to walk around Cameron in a circular formation, which just happened to look like a pentagram to some players who discovered the Easter egg, and it unintentionally added to the creepiness of the sound effects. Let me say, stories like this are why I love behind-the-scenes information about games. Okay, we are in the home stretch now. These final 3 Easter eggs are some of my favorites because they have a long history with the World of Warcraft, and served a purpose before growing into something that we were actually able to investigate. To the north of Northshire and east of Stormwind City, we will find a beautiful mountain pass connecting Elwynn to the Burning Steppes. Several small lakes dot the pass, and small rivers and waterfalls connect them to Crystal Lake outside Goldshire. In the vanilla release of the game, this area and everything in it were placed to give adventurers something interesting to look at while flying between the southern tip of the Eastern Kingdoms and Khaz Modan. These brief glimpses at inaccessible areas of course captured the imagination of most who saw it, with rumors swirling about what they were and how you could get to them. You couldn't, of course, but that did not dissuade enterprising explorers from trying to find a way. Eventually, when flying was added to Azeroth, adventurers were finally able to touch down and take a look at these areas. Let's start up here at the top. A small house can be found here on the map, perched in the mountains. A flock of both black and white sheep reside on this peak, and hidden amongst their number is a mechanical sheep named Tecton. This may be a reference to Philip K. Dick's novel Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, the basis of the Blade Runner franchise. A lone gnome named Agi Tyler can be found in this home, sitting in front of the fire. There is no furniture or decoration within this home, but a cart outside can be seen carrying essential supplies, like kegs of alcohol. Tecton the mechanical sheep will explode if attacked, knocking their assailant back and enraging Tyler, who exits the home to berate whomever he finds outside. The gnome is a reference and tribute to a Blizzard employee named Tyler Agi. Below the lonely gnome, here on the map, we will find a small but well-stocked camp resting on the bank of the river flowing through the mountain pass. 2 corgis named Nom and Toph playfully encircle the area, while a gnome named Rue and dwarf named Turb reside in the camp, both donning high-tier armor sets. Turb will explain that the pair were once adventurers, traveling across Azeroth, the Outlands, and Pandaria, before deciding to settle down somewhere quiet. A boat is run ashore here next to a fallen tree, which seems to imply that they traveled here over water. That would be rather impressive, given that the only ways in and out of this particular inlet by water involve an upward or downward traversal of a waterfall. It seems likely that Terp, Rue and their dogs are a reference to specific people and animals, but it is unclear whom they are meant to represent. Some have suggested that Terp is a reference to Mark Turpin, host of a Warcraft-themed podcast called The Instance, and though he would like to, Turpin does not believe this is the case, so who knows. Further along the mountain pass, closer to Northshire Valley, we will come upon another small camp tucked away within the mountains, found here on your map. A lone man, Jeremiah Seeley, lives here with his pet cat, Navin. Interestingly, Seeley is the in-universe author of the item Tome of the Calm Mind, which allows players to change their talents for 60 seconds while outside of combat. When interacted with, Seeley will explain that he doesn't get many visitors up here. Presumably, he chose such a secluded area to calm his own mind. He tells us that he is here searching for inspiration to write, quote, something less technical. When asked if he has found any inspiration, he declines to answer. He does not wish to discuss his ideas because, as he says, the last time he did, someone else stole it and turned it into a bad romance novel. Seeley is a reference to former Blizzard employee Jeremy Seeley, a technical writer on World of Warcraft. And there you have it, travelers. All the interesting environmental details, Easter eggs, and interesting little tidbits I could find in Elwynn Forest. If you know of anything that I missed or have details about something that I didn't explain here, please put it down in the comments below. I tried to be as thorough as possible, but this world is just so big that it's inevitable that I missed something. Tell me, what did you think of this video? I loved finding these little details, and I want to do it for the rest of the game and a whole lot of others too. And hey, while I'm thinking about it, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe for more. Every time I do a little Easter egg video like this, I want to pair it with a video explaining the lore of a province like this. So keep an eye out for a video explaining the lore of Elwynn Forest coming very, very soon. If you want to make sure you don't miss that, ring the bell and you'll get notified when it's uploaded. I had a ton of fun with this one, guys, and I hope you did too. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.